The Bilvavi on Meditational Breathing, Part 1 of 10. The Avoda of Breathing. Cheshvan, the smell left behind from Yomim Narayim. We are now in the month of Cheshvan, after all the festivals of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, heading into the winter. We are taught by our sages that every month contains a special ability which we can use to serve Hashem. In the Svarim HaKadoshim, our sages tell us that the power of the month of Cheshvan is the sense of reach, smell. Smell is unique from the rest of the senses in that it continues to linger with us even after what we already smelled isn't in front of us anymore. The senses of sight, hearing, taste, and touch can only be sensed when you are sensing it in front of you. You can't see, hear, taste, or touch something if it's not in front of you, but you can continue to smell something even when it isn't in front of you anymore. For example, when a person smells flowers, he can remember how it smelled long after the flowers aren't here anymore. This is why the month of Cheshvan is connected with smell. During Cheshvan, we are left with the spiritual smell of the Yomim Narayim, long after it's gone. What is this sense of smell that we remain with from the Yomim Narayim, and how can we use it? Having quiet time every day to reflect. Firstly, before we continue, we must know that if a person wishes to serve Hashem in a true and inner way, he needs to have quiet heart time every day. During each of the continuing months, we will explain what the avoda of each month is, but in every month our goal is the same, to live a more inner kind of life. This can only be done with our heart time that we must set aside every day. We need this heart time in order to internalize any avoda we do. If someone doesn't set aside time every day for heart time, it is not possible to really understand any of the coming ways of Avodas Hashem which we will speak about in the coming months. We must have times of quiet every day in order to think and reflect into our inner world. Without this heart time, not only will we be preventing from actualizing any of the avoda, we won't even understand at any of the methods of avoda at all. The purpose here is to open our panemius, our inner world, to us and reveal a more inner kind of life. This needs specially set aside time for every day. We must seclude ourselves a little from the world in order to open up the internal world within us. We have repeated this point several times because it must be very clear. We must set aside time every day for heart time. There is nothing to be gained from these words unless we have this time every day. Smell helps us sense our inner world. Having understood that, now we can start the avoda of this month using our sense of smell, the chush harech. When used in an inner way, the sense of smell helps us feel beyond the external dimension of things. When we smell something, we are sensing something more internal than what it appears to be. Every Jew's soul wants to know of the inner world of the soul, but we cannot sense it with the other four senses. The sense of smell is the only sense that is able to sense any panemius, inner spiritual layer of reality in our life. The sages say that the only physical sense which our soul has pleasure from is the sense of smell. Smell is the most spiritual kind of sense from all the senses. It is beyond the physical senses. It can smell spirituality. The external superficial layer of our sense of smell can only smell the physical, but there is an inner use of our sense of smell which can smell the spiritual. Our sense of smell has two layers to it. The external superficial layer of smell is when we smell the physical, such as smelling the scent of a flower, and the inner layer of smell, which can smell the spirituality and even the physical. Our sense of smell is able to reach deep into the physical and smell something spiritual in it. Smelling spirituality can show us how something which looks only physical can really be spiritual. The power of breath. Our nose can do two things: it can smell and it can breathe. The power of breath in us is essentially the nishmas chayim, the breath of life that was breathed into us from Hashem. It is written, every soul praises Hashem, and the sages explain this to mean that for every breath a person breathes, a person must praise Hashem. Thus, one must be aware that his every breath comes from Hashem. If one is not aware of his breathing, he is not able to thank Hashem for it, because if he does not feel it, he cannot appreciate it. If a person is unaware of his breathing, maybe he will be able to express his gratitude to Hashem after every 10 times that he breathes in and out, but he will not be able to feel grateful to Hashem for every single breath. Only when he becomes aware of his breathing can he come to thank Hashem for every single breath that he breathes. Beginning to become aware of your breathing. How does one begin to feel and become aware of his breathing? One needs to set aside time for this and listen and sit quietly and start exhaling and inhaling with calmness. Pay attention to the breathing and listen slowly to the breathing. Then you will begin to feel the breathing. Quiet time is necessary for this because if a person is harried, like if he is mentally anxious about something, and surely if he's physically bombarded, then there is no chance that he will be able to feel his breathing and become aware of it. But if a person sets aside time in his day for this, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, or even 3 minutes a day, and he tries to become aware of each breath that he breathes during this time, not only will he become aware of his breathing, but he will begin to feel a more inward kind of feeling as he is exhaling and inhaling. Without having this quiet time to feel your breathing is only being experienced superficially, as if it is one of the many various functions of the body. But when a person makes sure to have this quiet time during the day to feel his breathing and to pay attention to his breathing, he will begin to uncover the panemius, the inner depth that is contained in every breath. Inhaling and exhaling to reach our panemius, our inner existence, our inner essence. Many people, especially in our times, where people are borrowing secular ideas that come from the Gentile world, are practicing a method of breathing where a person imagines that he is releasing any negativity from his body upon exhaling, and upon inhaling, the person imagines that he's breathing in new energy that will invigorate his body. However, this is just an external use of breathing. Our sages reveal to us the inner way to use the power of breathing, which goes far deeper than this. When we speak here of setting aside quiet time during the day to feel your breathing, we are not intending to copy the Gentile approach. Our intention here is to tread the path that our previous sages took when it came to this power, and it was they who taught us about it. When we became of our breathing, we are essentially becoming aware that there is a nishmas chayim, a breath of life, that was breathed into us by Hashem, and thereby become closer to Hashem from this depth that we reach. Our breathing, which is sustained by Hashem's breath, is thus our very life. We can find the very source of our life contained in our breathing. When we begin to become aware of our breathing quietly and calmly by listening to our breath, we begin to recognize and feel an entirely different and inner perspective towards what life is. Let's explain what is meant here. In whatever action we perform, Whether we use our sense of sight, hearing, speech, or anything else that we do, most of the time we are unaware of these actions. These actions are usually not connected to our awareness. Most of the time we are far from our own selves, and surely that will mean that we are far from Hashem, because most of the time we are far from our own inner world. Therefore, when we begin to take deep breaths and we are listening deeply to our breathing, we need to bring the breath into a deeper place in ourselves. And then we exhale that breath and we go deeper from there, from the deeper place that we have already reached. Slowly, as we keep doing this, we can keep penetrating further and further into ourselves, deeper and deeper into ourselves. From all of the senses, the sense of smell, which our breathing is enabled by, is the deepest and most inner kind of sense. When we see something, sometimes it can have a deep effect on us, and sometimes it does not. When we hear something, sometimes we are deeply affected, but sometimes we are not. When we touch something, we are feeling the physicality of something and we are not feeling anything deep in this. But when we inhale the scent of something, using our sense of smell, we can sense it deeply. We can keep taking in the scent of something where we continue to smell it more deeply. In the same way, we can also deepen our breathing. We need to try this in the actual sense. For every breath that you exhale and inhale, you can take the breath deeper and deeper into yourself. Train yourself to slowly deepen your breathing, deepening your breath each time. This is an amazing ability which Hashem has given to his creations. It is a physical act of exhaling and inhaling, yet it is a use of the sense of smell, which is the only physical sense that our neshama enjoys, as our sages taught. It is the sense which we can use to penetrate deeply into ourselves. When a person gets used to this, sitting quietly and calmly, taking in deep breaths and listening to them, it can open up before him a great opening that will help him get to deeper places in his soul. Entering our inner world. The avoda of a person, as we have mentioned and it is known, is to enter into his inner world and live an internal life, a life of the heart, a life of living the depth of the neshama. The power of breathing which Hashem has given to man is one of the amazing powers which man can use to enter into his inner world. Of course, the main avoda of a man is to learn Torah and to keep the mitzvahs, and the main avoda of a woman is to keep the mitzvah of modesty. And the common denominator between all men and women is that we all have to work on our middos so that our hearts can become more purified and so that the barriers between us and Hashem will be removed. Then we can enter into the inner depth contained in our heart. But there is also another way for us to enter into our inner world, which works in tandem with keeping the mitzvahs, and it is not independent of learning Torah and keeping mitzvahs, chas v'sholom. The power of breathing can help us enter more inward into ourself. At first, getting used to it will feel like a mere breathing exercise, and you will only feel it in the physical sense. But if you get used to deeply listening to your breath as you take the deep breaths, concentrating deeply into this, you will suddenly feel that you have entered deeper places which you never knew about until now, that were inside of you. Okay, now there was a footnote before, just above this paragraph. The sources in our Sefarim HaKodesh that discuss the avoda of breathing are in the Sefarim of Rabbi Abu Lafia and the Sefer Yesod Yosef of Reb Shlomo of Zebel. For more on the avoda of breathing, drashas of Tefillah 34, Revival of the Living, and in Fixing Your Water 6, The Desire for Movement, and more extensively in the Hebrew Shirim of the series Das Nishmasecha. Now back to the text. This is one of the powers that help us serve Hashem, but it is not necessarily meant to be the path that every person must take. Some people are more inclined to this avoda, and some people are less inclined to take this path. But for those who do feel inclined towards this path, this avoda can be a great key for them to enter their inner world. It begins from a mere physical act of exhaling and inhaling, and at first it will not feel very inward or spiritual at all. But as you get used to deeply listening to the breathing will first enter deeper into the physical heart, and eventually, as you keep doing it, it will enter into the deeper and more spiritual parts. This is the Ruach Hayim, the spirit of life, which penetrates into the Ruach that is found in the heart. A word of caution before beginning the breathing exercise. We must emphasize that this avoda must be done calmly, slowly, and patiently. If a person will try to accelerate the process by taking in many deep breaths in quick succession of each other, and he's anxiously trying to get inward with each breath, this is physically endangering. It is spiritually harming as well. It must be done quietly and calmly, pleasantly, and not with pressure to get anywhere. You need to strongly want to get there, of course, but it must not be forced or anxious. You need to want to get there calmly, with serenity. The desire should be calm. You are calmly trying to, to get deeper into yourself. We have we have had to give special caution about this because it is very possible for one to harm himself if he is ignorant of these rules. Now we can begin with Hashem's help of how to make this more practical. Although these are very subtle matters, we will try to explain it as much as Hashem allows us to, and to explain as precisely as we can. Step 1. Becoming aware of your normal breathing. The first step is to begin with your normal breathing. Become aware of your breathing and don't try to manipulate your breathing in any way that you are not used to. Simply become aware of your normal breathing. This is the first step. Sit with yourself each day for a few minutes, breathe normally, and just pay attention to breaths. Step 2. Deep breaths. After you feel that you have become more aware of your normal breathing, and that this is awareness has become more natural to you, and that you're not straining yourself for this, now comes the next step. Try to deepen your breathing a bit more. Sit and take slightly deeper breaths than your normal breathing. The first time you do this, take a deep breath and keep repeating this for a few times with the very same kind of deep breath. After you feel that you reach a certain depth and that it's natural to you, and you are not straining yourself to feel it, try to deepen the breathing a bit more. Concentrate a bit more deeply on the breathing and breathe in more deeply than before, and keep repeating. We need to keep doing this until we can do it easily without concentrating too deeply on it. Do not try to accelerate the process of trying to reaching a deeper place in you each time. Just go slowly in the process. Breathe in a bit deeper after a number of breaths. Keep deepening the breathing this way, and slowly you will see that you have reached a deeper place in yourself, but without concentrating so hard to get there. Step 3. Sudden inner recognition. When you have reached a deeper place in yourself, at some point you will suddenly recognize that you have reached a deeper place in yourself. This might not happen to you right away, as soon as you reach the deeper place in yourself. You might feel it sometime after you have slowly gotten there, where it will suddenly dawn upon your awareness. This does not mean that you have simply learned how to take deeper breaths. If you have done it correctly and you have gotten further into yourself with the breathing, it is like entering into a new room in yourself, where you see what is inside of it. When you deepen your breathing and you have truly reached a deeper place into yourself, you will know that you are there. You will begin to recognize a deeper place in yourself that you were not aware of until now. If you do not feel that you've reached a deeper place in yourself, it must be that all of the deep breathing was done superficially with not enough genuine intent to go deeper into yourself. When you have reached a deeper place in yourself, of this Chazal referred to when they said, "For every breath praise Hashem." The meaning of this statement is not that each breath is like the breath before it and that you must praise Hashem for the same kind of each of these breaths. Rather, it means that each new breath that we breathe can help us enter deeper into ourselves, which gives us greater inner recognition of ourselves, and thus there is new reason to praise Hashem for each of these breaths. The power of deep breathing can provide a person with great opening, a key to the greater depth of feeling and inner recognition, because it takes you to a deeper place in yourself. Therefore, we must emphasize that it needs to be done slowly and to keep repeating the process described until you are calm, which enables you to act from a deeper place in yourself. Hashem says, "My son, give your heart to me." Hashem wants our hearts, and the kind of heart that Hashem wants us to give to Him is that we give Him the very depth that we reach in ourselves. Reaching a deeper place in our heart, which we can reach through the power of deep breathing, enables us to dive into Hashem from a deeper and more genuine place in ourselves. It enables us to be kind to others from a deeper place in ourselves. It enables us to really use our hearts for Hashem. Hashem wants our hearts. Rahmana Liba Ba'eh. Rahmana Liba. There are many ways of how we can reach the depth of the heart: through exertion in Torah learning, through tefillah, through fixing our middos, and other ways as well. But an additional way to get to our heart, as we explained here, is to use the power of breathing, to get used to breathing deeply and to reach a deeper place in oneself from the breathing. When we reach deeper into ourselves, we're able to act from a more genuine place in ourselves, from our heart. When one gets used to this power and he is regularly reaching a deep place in himself via the act of deep breathing, he will see a transformation in his life where his actions will be emanating from his heart. Step 4. Reaching the self. Let's try to continue explaining this avoda, although it's a matter that is very deep, subtle, and hidden. After a person feels that he has reached a deeper place in himself, and he feels that he has reached the deepest possible place in himself that he is aware of, now comes this next stage where a person can slowly penetrate even further than this as he continues the deep breathing. He will eventually feel that he has reached the very essence of his I, the deepest possible place in oneself. One can reach it by continuing to breathe deeply, feeling that he's getting deeper and deeper into himself until he eventually reaches his I. At that point, his breathing is helping him touch upon his very I. His breathing has brought him into the deepest possible place in oneself. In order to reach such a place in oneself and to be able to breathe deeply to get there, it takes a lot of hard work before this. It will take a lot of time and effort to get there. Lots of hard work, but again, it needs to be done calmly and peacefully. It will mainly require a lot of purity and holiness in one's life, which opens the heart more and makes it easier to get there. The more a person has purified himself internally, the more he has softened his heart, and his heart goes from being a heart of stone into a heart of flesh. It will then become much easier for his breathing to get further into himself, where he can penetrate into the deepest part of himself. Step 5. Sensing Hashem's existence in the self. Finally, there is one more step to reach. Let us explain it with siyata d'shmaya, although it is a very, very deep and subtle matter. The final step is for one to deepen the breathing to the point that he senses the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is written, "I will dwell amongst them." And the sages explain this to mean it does not say in him, but in them, in the hearts of each person. Thus we are taught that Hashem dwells in the heart of every Jew. This point is the deepest place to reach through breathing, and it is the true meaning of the Nishmas Chaim that was breathed into us by Hashem. When Hashem breathed into us a spirit of life, He breathed into us a breath of Himself, so to speak. That means that we are breathing due to Hashem's own breath that was placed in us. When we access this kind of deep breathing, He is touching upon the revelation of godliness that is found deep in the heart. This is the deepest possible kind of breathing that a Jew can ever breathe. Conclusion. Part of the reason why we have had to explain this exercise very specifically is because there are many breathing exercises which have been gleaned from modern Gentile sources. We have tried to present here one of the paths explained by our sages that describe how to use the power of breathing in a way that helps us reach a purer place in ourselves. The power of breathing is a way for us to reach the I in us, the pure soul which Hashem creates us with, and even more, breathing can help us feel Hashem's breath as the source of our own breathing. The words here were not ideas. They are about a way to reach an inner kind of life, of how to reach the depths of the neshama, and of how to reach the Creator. But these are matters which require a lot of effort and training and getting used to, as well as holiness and purity and heavenly assistance in order for us to be successful with it. May we merit from Hashem to have a desire to enter into our inner world and to at least choose one of the paths that helps us get there, even if it is not necessarily through the power of breathing. Let us stress one last point. The power of breathing is just one of the ways of how to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are many other ways to serve Hashem as well, which are proper and valid, and each person needs to choose one of the paths that are mentioned by our sages. One should choose the path that speaks the most to his heart. The words here do not mean to imply that everyone must take this path of using the power of breathing chas v'sholem. A person should only use this path of serving Hashem if it is close to his heart. The common denominator with all people is that all of us need to enter our inner world in order to live a more inner kind of life so that we can reach our essence and reach a more complete recognition of our Creator.